Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandra and I'm the crochet designer behind SandraStitches. So happy to have you here, and you are here because you are looking for some crochet goodness. So let's get started. Today I have a very special episode video for you where I will be talking about 13, because I have a bonus one which is at the end, so you want to watch up to the end of the video. Very clever ways and unique ways that you can use our little friends, the stitch markers. We all have them. They are spread all around our craft room. So let's see what we can do with them. All right, let's get started. All right, the first one is kind of an obvious one, but you know, we have to talk about it a little bit. And this is where we will, let me grab two stitch markers. Now, stitch markers, there are millions and millions of shapes and colors and handmade and plastic and whatever. And stitch markers can also be, you know, little pieces of yarn or bobby pins in different colors or whatever, or clips, all kind of clips. It does not have to be, they don't have to be bought stitch markers, expensive stitch markers. There are millions and millions of different stitch markers in the market. You just choose whoever, whatever, whichever suits you. I'm going to use my plain stitch markers I have in this box, which is, I have a few, these ones, I think I have about 5 of them in different colors, like in blue and other colors. I have these kind of stitch markers that are mostly for just marking while you are crocheting, because they tend to get out of the fabric, so I don't like them so much. And I have these ones which are the regular plain stitch markers, which I use all the time. These are the ones I use all the time, okay? But it doesn't really matter. All right, let's get to the first creative way you can use your stitch markers. Let's grab two, one in pink and one in blue, just for the example. And let's say you have a project, maybe like this one. Of course, you can find the free pattern on my blog and I will link it in the description box. But a pattern that has pattern repeats. So you want to mark where your pattern repeat starts, okay? Where it starts. Let's say we are working on this part of the pattern repeat and we are starting it at the beginning, okay? And then we mark it and we mark the end of the pattern repeat. So we know now this one is very obvious, right? Because, okay, so we have squares here, and then we have just rows in different colors and then other colors, but sometimes the pattern repeats are not so obvious and you need to mark where they start and where they end. So using stitch markers, it's a great idea to mark, so when you come back to your project, you know exactly where you are. And if you need to count your rows or your rounds of the pattern repeat, you will know exactly, because you will have our little helpers. Where are they now? Okay, here they are. Where are you? Okay, I couldn't find them because it's the same color, right? So we are going to have them marking for us the beginning and the end of the pattern repeat, so we know exactly how many rows or how many rounds. All right, This is tip number 1, way number 1 from 12, okay, 13 ways I will show you. Okay, tip number 2, set a reference point or a visual reference point on your project. What I mean by that, if you're working on a very, very big project, like maybe this one, I'm working on a blanket sampler, stitch sampler blanket that I am not sure if I'm going to be able to finish it because I'm not such a blanket person, but I want to point a special place that I know that I need to go back to in a big project. Maybe in such a big project I need to mark, you know, maybe I need to mark a place that I have to go back to it later and take care of it, or maybe I will have to do something in that spot and it's very, very big, and maybe if I'm looking at it like this I will not find it, but I have to mark it, right? So I will put a stitch marker in the place where I have to come back for any reason. I don't know, maybe you're working a big blanket and you want to put a flower or an embellishment or something to add, you know, to the big project, and you want to mark it. Maybe you want to mark a place where if you're working a sweater or a big thing, a big cardigan or something, you want to mark the buttons, how do you say it? Buttons, right? The buttons to close it, or whatever you want to mark in a big project, so you don't forget afterwards where you have to put something or do something in that place. All right, so this is my second tip on how to use stitch markers. Let's get to the third one. All right, the third one is a really good one because I use it all the time, and that is that you want to mark, if you're working a project that has increases and decreases, maybe like my Susanna shawl, some kind of chevron stitch, or my chevron top, we have here increases and decreases, right? So when we work the chevron stitch, we have to count and we have to mark exactly where to increase and where to decrease. So if we use our stitch markers while we are working and we mark the places, it will be easier for us. I know from my experience, when I'm working increases and decreases, sometimes not just chevron stitch, any stitch, sometimes you miss one or you overwork one, or you know, and then you find out when you are at the end of the row, and if it's a very, very long row, that you are missing stitches, or maybe you have too many stitches because you overworked one stitch. Very, very frustrating. So if you mark them, you will always know where your increase and decrease are, and then your projects will go smoother, right? You will not have to frog so much. It's just another way to make sure that you start your row or your round and you finish it and it's okay, especially when you're working increases or decreases. All right, this is number 3. Now let's go to number. Oh, okay, so I am chaining now. This is number 4. I am chaining now and counting in my head. Right, no. Every time I chain, and if I have to chain a very, very long chain, I start by counting and I say to myself, okay, I will remember in my head but it never, never, ever happens. So what I do now, I just keep chaining until I have a good amount of chains, right? And then I count 20. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I mark every 20 stitches. Of course, it depends on the length of your chain that you have to do, right? For me, 20 is the magic number. I use 20 because I think it's better for me. I don't know, my brain works like that. So I count 20. Some people count 10, some people count 15, some people count 30. It depends how long your chain should be. You can divide it and make a special number for you. So I count 20 and then I keep chaining, and I count 20 again and put the stitch marker and count 20 again, put the stitch marker, and then suddenly my phone rings or somebody talks to me and then I forget all my counting. So I have it already marked. I don't have to go back to the beginning. I have to go back just to the last marking point with my stitch marker. All right? I think this is a brilliant, brilliant idea. I know it's very common, and I hope you are using it because it's really, really good. And it saves you so much time, right? And frustration. If you have I don't know, 250 chains that you have to chain for a project, and you start counting, and then something distracts you, it's very frustrating. So just mark every 20, 30, 15, 10, whatever number works for you, chains, mark them with a stitch marker, and then your brain will be happy, right? All right, let's get to the next. All right, the next one, the fifth one, is to secure the end of your project when you just leave it in the middle and have to go somewhere. You know what happens if we don't do that? So we come back and we find maybe something happened to it and it's unraveled. For some reason, the yarn was pulled out or something happened. You don't have to have that. If you put the stitch marker at the end of the last stitch, then it will be secured and nothing will happen to your project until you come back to it. This is a really clever way to work. I know that we are so used to our crochet and we think, oh yeah, we know everything. Yeah, everything is fine, you know. I'll just put it down, put it in my bag, in my project bag. Nobody will touch it. And then something happens. Maybe you just put your hands in the bag and try to pull up the project, and by mistake you took the yarn and you just pulled the yarn and everything unraveled, or maybe a row or half row or whatever. Okay, it doesn't have to happen. You just put a stitch marker at the end, at the last stitch, and then as you can see nothing happens. It's secured. This is the last project I'm working on. You like it? All right, let's move to the sixth idea on how to use stitch markers to make your crochet life so much better. Okay, the next one is color coding. If you're working on a project that you have different techniques going on, different stitch patterns, and you don't, you need to remember because maybe there are too many, or maybe you need to go back to reference in the pattern, or maybe you just don't want to reference in the pattern and you just want something to remind you what's going on next. So you can use stitch markers for color coding. I give you a small example. Like I have this beanie, and here we have just plain double crochet here in the cap, and then we have front post, and then we have single crochet here. So maybe I want to decide that whenever I use double crochet, I use a orange one, and whenever I use front post means, oops, let me close it. All right, front post maybe for me will be always pink. So whenever I use in a project front post, I will know it's pink, because I will have a small list, maybe in a paper or maybe in my computer, and I will write down pink front post, orange double crochet, green single crochet, yellow back loop only, all those things. So every time I know by the color which technique or which stitch I am going to be using. Maybe purple is I don't know, some kind of feather, or some kind of cables, or some kind, or Tunisian or mosaic. You decide. Just use them as color coding for your projects. All right, this one is a great one, because how many times have you been confused about where is the right side of your project and which one is the wrong side of your project, right? Sometimes it's really confusing, especially when you're using stitches that look so much alike on both sides. Look at this sample of this stitch. Okay, it's called the caramel stitch. Beautiful, beautiful texture stitch, and it looks so much alike from the right side and the wrong side that it's really difficult to say which one is which. All right, so sometimes it's okay, because you can say it's, you know, reversible, you can use it on both sides, but sometimes you're using this pattern in combination with other patterns, with other stitches, and you need to know, because you want the part of this part of your project to pop out in their best way, right? So you can use a stitch marker and put it in the whatever, right or wrong side, so you can always know when you start your project where is the right side of the stitch pattern. Very, very, very useful. All right, let's move to the next one. Okay, the next one is for when you are working in the round and you are working continuous rounds. How many times happened to you that you have no idea how many rounds have you made? Because it's continuous, right? So you go on and on and on and on and on, and you don't know. I think that I do not have any project that I made in continuous rows. I don't know why. For some reason, I don't use that technique, but I think it's a great way to just mark your beginning point every time you come back to it, right? Because you will never know. You go continuously round and round and round. So let's say this is one of my baskets projects. It's not continuous, but let's say it was, all right, just for the example. And I started here, and this is my starting point. So I will mark it with a stitch marker. And then when I come back and continue, I will move it to the next one. And when I come back and continue, I will move it to the next one. Now, this is good also for knowing, of course, for knowing where to start and where to finish. And then when you need to finish your project, you know where to finish it. But also, if you have to count how many rounds have you made and write them down, so you will know each time you move your stitch marker, you can, you know, in a little piece of paper or on your computer or whatever, on one of your notes, you mark that you did another round. So if you, at the end of the project, if you need to know how many rounds have you made, maybe you're writing a pattern, maybe you are using a pattern, and it says you need to finish it after 54 rounds. Sorry. Okay, how can I count my rounds now, because everything is continuous and I don't know where to start and where to begin, so, and where to finish. So using a stitch marker is a clever way for this matter. Okay. All right, the next one is again, I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope that you will write me in the comments and tell me which one was a new one for you, and if you're using any of these techniques and these tips, and even if you have new ones, something that I did not talk about, that would be great. All right, let's move to the next one. So maybe you have a beanie, or maybe you have a shawl, or maybe you have a garment, or maybe you have whatever project, and you want to put an to add something on it, right? Maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a star, maybe it's a snowflake, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You need to mark where to put it, right? So maybe you need to try it on your head, try it on a mannequin head, or try it on somebody else and move it around and see. And let's say I want to put this snowflake and add it to my beanie. So because I want this beanie to be kind of a very, very snowy, wintry, and with something special on it. So I would use a stitch marker to mark exactly where I want it. Maybe I want it on the side, maybe I want it on the front, maybe I want it in the back, or maybe I want it on the top. I don't know, whatever you want to put, anything to add to any of your projects, use a stitch marker to mark the exact place. Okay, the next one, it's very, very useful. And as you will see, I use it all the time. Now, if you are working on a wearable, okay, usually I use it on wearables, and you just finish your 2 panels or 3 panels, or, you know, the sleeves or whatever, but you are not sure yet, and before you join everything by sewing or by stitching it or whatever, that then you might have to frog if it's not fitting well. So you can join all parts with stitch markers and be sure exactly how it looks, how it feels, how it measures. Okay, now here I have a sample of a pattern that I'm working on. So I needed to join the 2 panels and join the shoulders and count how many stitches for the head, for this part, and then I have to count how many stitches for the sleeve, for the armhole, right? And put a stitch marker on the other side, do the same, and then I can try it on me and see how it feels, or try it on somebody else and see how it feels before I go and join everything. And then if it's not good, I will have to frog it, and, you know, very frustrating. So using the stitch markers before you actually stitch them together, it will be such a great time saver for you. All right, let's move to the next one. Okay, this one, it's kind of a, you know, a new one. All right, so if you're working on a project that has very tricky stitches, maybe like cables, maybe like the feather stitch, or all kind of more worky stitches, you want to mark them to know where they are. Okay, so you want to know on your project and mark with a stitch marker where they start, where they finish, how they go. And so if you're working on a bigger project, you know exactly that now we're working on the cables, right? So you have a right. This will be our 12, all right? The last one, but I have another one, which is a bonus one, and I think it's incredible. If you're working and using some kind of, special stitches, like bubbles, and you need to know where are your bubbles, you can just mark them with your stitch marker. You're working your project, and then you know that after some type of, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 rows, you have to work your bubbles again. So you mark them, and then you know again where they are. And you know that these are bubbles. Maybe you can mark them in a special color, like we said before, and then you know these are bubbles. They are not puffs, they are not something else, they are bubbles, because you mark them in a special color, and you also mark them whenever they come back to your project. All right, these were my 12 tips for creatively using stitch markers. But now I have a special 13th one that I think will blow your mind away. I hope so, because it did mine anyway. Let's get to it. So I know most of us have needles, tapestry needles that we use in our projects, right? So we have, maybe we're using some regular plastic needles, or maybe we're using some metal needles. Now, who does just throw the needle inside the project bag and then spend hours looking for it because it's somewhere there inside the project bag, right? I do. Maybe you do too. Maybe you don't, but I do. So I came up with this idea to put a stitch marker on the needle, like so, right? And then I throw it inside my project bag, and I can easily find it. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go missing. I don't have to call 911. Everything is there. I have my needle, right? Because I find it by the stitch marker, and it pops up. It doesn't go away. It doesn't hide behind fabric or whatever. I can easily find it. So I think it's a great idea to use your stitch markers in a different way. They are not marking something on your project. They are just helping you find your needle in your project bag. All right. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will use any of these techniques or these tips to creatively use your stitch markers, that we all have dozens of them. Tell me in the comments which technique or which tip was the best for you, you found incredibly new, or maybe you have some new suggestions that I haven't talked about, so we can all learn from you. Just put them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time with a new video. Who knows, something else. All right,